What's up, sports fans? I'm Jake with Sports Around the Bar, and today we're going to be fixing the Jacksonville Jaguars for the upcoming 2021 season. We're going to be going through everything from free agency, from what went wrong last year. We're going to talk about their draft as well as everything else they should do on a roster basis to fix this team and get them back into playoff contention for 2021. We are going to be going through each and every team in the NFL, so if you don't see the one that you're most interested in, you should be able to click up above. I'm sure right, left, I don't know. I'll have a link up there somewhere. You can click on that. You can find the team that you want to watch. If you want to stick and watch all of them, the playlist will be linked as well in the description. Let's get right into it, though. Let's start with the Jacksonville Jaguars and what they should do with their new head coach, Urban Meyer, this offseason. The first step for any GM trying to fix their team in the offseason should always be to look at last year and see what went wrong with this team. And in terms of the Jacksonville Jaguars, as you can see on the slide behind me, a lot went wrong with this team. We're talking about them. They were ranked 30th on offense, 31st on defense, so we're already way behind the 8 ball when it comes to that. Really, the only bright spot was the passing offense, where we finished 21st, still just barely out of the bottom 10 in the league. We have a lot of work to do. The good news is we have almost a little over $80 million worth of cap space to do it. And we also have a bevy of draft picks this year. The Jacksonville Jaguars, one of the reasons it was one of the most attractive jobs in free agency this year for head coaching vacancies is because of how many assets this team has to fix and kind of right the ship going into 2021. We have 5 picks in the top 3 rounds. We have a bunch more in the later end of the draft as well. And we have the most salary cap space out of anybody. So let's talk about what we're going to do to put that to work right away for us. Let's start with a list of our key free agents leaving Jacksonville this year and talk about who we want to keep and who we will be more okay with letting go. And it starts with DJ Hayden at cornerback. We're talking about a 31-year-old that came into the league as a pretty hot prospect. At this point in his career, though, I think it's okay that we move on from him. It's time we refresh the position and brought in a little bit younger blood. We don't want to let all of our veterans go, but when it comes to re-signing DJ Hayden and what it's probably going to cost to make that happen, I think we're better off letting him hit the free agent market. If we were tighter up on cap, we might consider trying to re-sign our guy versus going out in free agency and risk overpaying somebody or risk having to start a young player. But this is a team that has almost nothing to lose in the first year with Urban Meyer. Every sort of opportunity we have to get better as a team and really roll the dice to see if that can happen, we should be taking it. So letting DJ Hayden walk is not a problem for us, at least at cornerback right now. Next, we have Tyler Eifert, who, even though we said we should take risks, tight end is one of those positions that don't come around very often, and there may be a few guys like Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith out there in free agency who we should target if we get the opportunity. We still need to play it safe because most teams are going to be operating with 2 to 3 realistically active tight ends that can get involved in the offense. We don't want to let every one of our tight ends walk in free agency. It starts with Tyler Eifert, and I also missed signing James O'Shaughnessy on this list. I missed a couple names on this list. We'll talk about them in just a second because they aren't quite as marquee signings. But when it comes to Tyler Eifert, even though he hasn't had the best production, he's been somewhere around adequate, and we don't want to let all of that walk out the door in 1 year. We're going to offer him a 2-year, $6.5 million contract with $3.25 million of that being guaranteed. We're going to give him basically the first year as a guarantee, and the second year is going to be a bit of a prove-it deal for the 31-year-old tight end. And the simple fact of keeping him around is going to be just an insurance blanket in case we miss on our free agents, in case we don't get the guy we want in the draft. We're going to keep Eifert around to be that safety blanket for a young quarterback that, spoiler alert, when we start talking about the draft, will probably be coming in to take the reins of this offense. We're also going to re-sign O'Shaughnessy, who I talked about before. We're going to give him that same 2-year, $6.5 million contract with the first year being guaranteed out of that. Mostly, again, we're talking about keeping 2 relatively safe players that maybe won't be elite by any means in today's NFL at the position, but should be good second and third guys in this roster as long as we're able to upgrade the position. And if they're not, again, we aren't just letting all of our talent walking out the door and kind of scratching our heads saying, well, who do we sign here before the season starts? So we're going to hang on to both of them. We'll move on to D-tackle here. When we're talking about Avery Jones and the impact he's had on this team, especially without Al Woods playing next to him last year, we need to make sure we keep him on our defensive line. He was still one of our better defensive players. This is still a defense that needs to vastly improve. So I'm not totally against letting him go, but at the very least, when we look at his production, we look what Avery Jones has brought to us over the past couple seasons, I'm all for giving him another chance to sort of influence this team and be a leader. We don't want to just totally have a team of mercenaries coming in. We want to have some familiar faces that have been around, that know how to play Jaguars football, and can kind of ease all these new sort of recruits that we're bringing into the team into the culture that we've already had here. So we're going to offer the 30-year-old D tackle a 2-year, $6 million deal. Again, we're staying very cheap with some of these guys. If those numbers start creeping up higher than what we've already kind of promised, we're going to let them test free agency. We're going to let them walk because there are better players to be had. But if we can find a value in bringing them back and being a role player in their position, we're certainly going to try to do that. Now, continuing down the list, Keelan Cole, I think it's about time we let him walk. We need a refresh at the wide receiver position. He, among others in this wide receiving group, we already have Shenault. We still have DJ Chark under contract, and we have Westbrook that, again, didn't make this list, but we're going to re-sign Westbrook as well to kind of play in the slot and kind of be that versatile guy. We're also going to look to upgrade the position. The moral of the story is we can't spend all of that free cap we have to just keep the guys that we have because obviously the guys that we have are not good enough. So we're going to move on from Keelan Cole. We're going to let him test free agency. Same thing with Chris Conley. We're going to let him walk after taking last year off as well, and we're going to refresh that position in other ways going into the draft and into free agency. Kamale Correa, trade bait from last season. We're going to let him walk. We're not really that interested in keeping him. I don't think he's been terribly effective here or even in Tennessee before we traded for him. So letting him, it was a worthy risk in the middle of the season last year to bring him in for a low-round pick. We're going to let him walk at this point, though. I don't really think we stand much to gain by offering him a short contract. He may be the kind of guy that when you get to training camp and you realize your roster hasn't been as fleshed out at the edge position as you'd like it to be, maybe you float him like that veteran minimum kind of deal to bring him back. Right now, though, he's not in our plans when we're going into the draft. We're going into free agency. We're looking to bring in better players than that so that hopefully we can get off of that 31st ranked defense in both, well, we're 27th in the pass and 30th in the run. So we need to improve. Letting guys like this go is a great way to do that. Now, also, we have Cam Robinson down the list. And again, people kind of fear change. He's only 26, but he's been in the league now for 4 years, and he's never quite put it together. Our offensive line has pretty much been a problem, especially on the tackle positions for years now, pretty much since the Jaguars have gone to the AFC Championship. So we need to get better at the position. We're going to move on from Cam Robinson as well. We could offer him a lot of money to stick around, but again, this is a position that we need to get significantly better at, especially since he plays the left side tackle for our new quarterback coming in. One of the main things you can do to ruin a quarterback is not have a good enough offensive line and let him get hit and develop bad sort of tendencies. We're not going to do that when we draft Trevor Lawrence coming up here. We are going to move on from Cam Robinson, and we are going to improve that position before turning the reins back and overpaying for a guy like Cam Robinson and locking ourselves down for a long-term deal. Our last two guys, Chris Thompson and Mike Glennon, we're going to let both of them go. Gardner Minshew is going to slot back into our second quarterback, our sort of backup quarterback that once we draft a quarterback, he'll kind of fill that role that Mike Glennon's already sort of in. We don't need to spend any money on him. Chris Thompson, again, if we can work out a veteran minimum kind of deal, I'm not opposed to him sticking around, but he's not the guy he was in Washington anymore, and we need to improve at that position. We're going to be looking to upgrade that later on as well. Now let's take a look at our offense. As you can see here on the chart behind me, we have some significant weaknesses that we need to address, and we've sort of already done that. You can kind of see the color coding kind of shows you our thoughts on everybody in the position. Let's start with receivers. We like DJ Chark, but again, as a number one wide receiver, I'd like to be a little bit stronger at that position. So when we talk about free agency, you're going to see where some of these moves come in. I like DJ Chark as a player, and I don't want you to get the wrong opinion because I have him in the average category. When it comes to a number one, there are significantly more receivers in the NFL that have more talent than DJ Chark. We still want him on the team. We think he can be a fantastic number two. We can use Shenault and him kind of in interchangeable roles to do different things. But we need a strong number one wide receiver that's going to be the key target for our young quarterback to come in and kind of lean on here. We need to upgrade that position. Now, you can see Shenault I have as a quality starter as well. He kind of impressed his first year. I like what I saw out of him. There's still a lot of room to grow, and I don't necessarily know quite where he's going to slot out over the next couple of years, but we should feel good about having him on the roster and having him as a starting player as well. Finally, you see Keelan Cole there in the slot. We also have Westbrook. Depth-wise, that's fine. We're letting Cole walk. We're not going to keep him around, but we have guys now that can play the slot. They can play the third. With Westbrook being a fourth receiver and then Shenault and Chark kind of rotating as that number two and number three slot, we're talking about a pretty solid receiving core as long as we get one of our guys in free agency. And with the money that we have, we should definitely be in the running to make at least one of those three wide receivers fall to us. Going back to the offensive line, again, Robinson has been a weakness for years now. It's time that we move on from him. We have Jawan Taylor on the right side that, again, we're not enthralled, but he's a young enough player, having only played 2 years for us, that we are not ready to throw him out by any means. We're going to have to keep leaning on him at the position and hope he develops his game now that we have Urban Meyer coming in, and hopefully his coaching staff can kind of get him to the heights that we saw when we drafted him a couple of years ago. Our interior line's been pretty good. If you take a look at Norwell, Linder, and Can there on the inside, we're in pretty good shape. They haven't performed the best in the NFL, but I believe if we kind of bolster this tackle position, the offensive line kind of rises and falls as a group, and hopefully we can go from having quality starters to maybe some elite status out of guys like Norwell that we've paid all that money to. They're definitely not in a position where we can move on from them, but we feel pretty good about the interior of the line, especially if we can clean up our tackle play. Again, Eifert at tight end, this is not something that we want to go into next season looking at him and saying, well, this is our number one tight end. We don't have anything to worry about. We want to improve the position. We'll talk about that here in just a second when we move back to free agency. And then we have Minshew as well, again, as a weakness on this team. Let me just say, I know that's going to upset a lot of Jags fans, that you see Minshew as one of the weaknesses on this team. But the moral of the story is we can improve at that position. And when we improve that position, this team should get a lot more dangerous. We have the first pick in the draft this year. There's almost no way you can not draft a quarterback, regardless of what you believe Minshew's ceiling and floor is. At this point, we can't go with him at our quarterback. We can't really trade out of this pick when we have a guy like Trevor Lawrence staring us in the face. We have to take him. We have to upgrade that position. That's why I have him listed as in the weakness category, even though I'm not necessarily sure that after what we've seen out of Minshew, we know that this is the best that we're going to get out of him. Finally, Robinson. Great year. Everyone's going to be campaigning in Jacksonville to keep him as the starter, but I see it also as a position that, again, even if you add another guy just as depth and as a rotational piece, I feel a lot more comfortable at the position. I like what we saw out of Robinson. Can we expect it to continue? I'm not as convinced, but we'll see. Again, it's one of those positions that if we go into next year and he's still our starter, we couldn't upgrade it because that never really came around to where we found the right guy to replace him. I'd be okay with that. That's why I kind of am in the average category. Next, moving on to defense, you can see that even though we didn't grade out very well, we have some quality players in this team. Guys like Miles Jack, guys like Schobert playing a linebacker. We have some strength at that position. Again, Avery Jones coming back is what should be very solid for us. We'd like to upgrade the defensive tackle position. Again, we've struggled with the run, even though we have good linebackers in Miles Jack and Schobert as well. And Jacob's not a bad player either. We need to get stronger in the interior of the line. Al Wood's coming back after taking last year off. Not really strong enough for us, so we're going to look to upgrade that position. We're really going to look that even though Al Woods has been good in the past, taking a year off and now coming back and being as advanced in age as he is, we're ready to upgrade that position and try to strengthen. I think that position by itself could be what gets our run defense back on track and playing a lot better than that 30th rank that we achieved last season. As far as the rest of our defensive line goes, you can see Keelan Chaisson and Josh Allen on either side of the defensive line. Obviously, we like Josh Allen. We like the way he's kind of progressed, and we believe we can get a lot more out of him if we can get the focus off of him a little bit by buffing up the rest of this defensive line. As far as Keelan Chaisson goes, again, the first year was not quite as impressive. We weren't as blown away with what he's brought to the table. But it's still too early to give up on him as a prospect. Obviously, 1 year is not enough to know what a guy's entire NFL career is going to be, especially when it's his first year in the NFL. We are still going to be looking to upgrade the position. We are still going to be looking to add more guys that can kind of rotate, and we're going to actually use Chaisson in maybe a smaller role, but more focused role that's going to hopefully accentuate his strengths and get him back on track to be the sort of prospect that we thought he could be when we drafted him last year, as high as we did. As far as our other positions, Josh Jones is leaving us at safety. He didn't make the list. He's not really a highly touted guy, but after a bad year last year, it's time we move on from him at safety and try to get better at that position, as well as Hayden leaving as well, so we're going to need to address that. We don't want too many young cornerbacks coming in because cornerback, kind of like tight end, is one of those positions you have to learn and you have to grow into in the NFL. It's very rare to have a guy come from college and dominate at corner. We just can't bet on that happening. So what we're going to do, we're going to address that position, and we're also going to address safety as well when we get the chance. Let's move on. Let's talk about free agency and who's going to be coming in to fill those roles that we just talked about. This is always the fun part, spending the money. So first, obviously, you see our biggest target is going to be Chris Godwin, wide receiver. We're going to offer him a record-breaking 5-year, $110 million. That's $22 million a year. It's going to beat Amari Cooper's number. He's going to be the highest paid wide receiver The reason he's our number one target is because we think he's the best between the big three of Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin, and Kenny Golladay out there in free agency this year, as well as his age. He's not even 25 yet at this point. We're talking about getting a guy for the next 5 years that won't even hit 30 until the very end of this contract. That's incredibly lucrative when you're talking about an NFL career. We think offering him that kind of money is going to be sort of that player that our young quarterback can grow with and can really lean on and really take all of the pressure off the rest of the pieces in this offense and really help get our offense kind of back up off the mat when we're talking about having the 30th ranked offense. Now, if we do miss out on Godwin, we will target Golladay. We will target Allen Robinson. We'll keep those guys in our back pocket. We'll kind of feel out where they're at when it comes to pricing as well. But Chris Godwin is for sure our number one target, and no matter what happens, we are going to offer enough money to land one of those 3 wide receivers for Trevor Lawrence when he comes in. After that, we're going to upgrade at tight end, another pass catcher, sort of the deputy to Chris Godwin's sheriff. We're going to try to bring in a pass-catching tight end, and the best available tight end that's going to be able to do that is Jonnu Smith from the Tennessee Titans. Not only are we robbing a division rival here, we're also getting a great great pass-catching tight end that's going to hopefully bolster our offense and give us that second option over the middle of the field after Godwin starts taking away all the attention from the outside. Now, there's no guarantee that Jonnu Smith is going to be out there. If he misses and Hunter Henry's still available, we're going to be looking for Hunter Henry as well. There's a good chance both of those guys get re-signed just because it's so hard to find tight ends. But if they're out there, we are going to break the bank with a 4-year, $40 million contract to Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry, whoever we can get our hands on. And we're going to guarantee about $22 million of that to make sure that we land our second big piece here in Jacksonville. Next, let's talk about the defensive interior, the defensive tackle position that we talked about needing to get a lot better. Obviously, Al Woods is coming back like we talked about. We re-signed Avery Jones, but we need a top-tier talent to help sort of solidify the middle of our defensive line. One of our biggest problems was teams were able to run on us too easily, and bringing in a guy like Shelby Harris should solve 2 problems at once. Our run defense should get a lot better with him in there as well as pass rush from the interior of the line should get better and help out guys like Josh Allen. So hopefully it's quite so easy to give him the double team. Bringing in a guy like Shelby Harris, again, it's going to be expensive, but bringing him in is going to be incredibly important for helping this defense. Usually fixing the defense starts with the defensive line. If you're not winning in the trenches, you're not winning very often in the NFL. So to fix that, we're going to bring in Shelby Harris and pay him a 3-year, $36 million contract. That's $12 million a year. Another large contract coming in. It's a good thing we have $83 million can afford to bring in these big pieces to fix this team right away. After that, we're going to save a little bit of money. We're not going to go after one of the marquee edge rushers. Again, we have Chaisson. We have Josh Allen. We need those guys to see the field still. So we need a guy that's going to be a rotational piece that's going to take the pressure off and hopefully get us 10, 12, 14 sacks maybe just being a pass rusher. And to do that, we're going to bring in Melvin Ingram, a guy that, again, a little bit older. At 31, he's not quite as young as he was. We're not going at the top end to try to make sure that we land just a marquee pass rusher because, again, we're not playing this guy 70, 80% of the snaps. We want him to be a rotational piece so that we can constantly keep our guys fresher and constantly put them in good situations that kind of suit their skill sets. Bringing in a guy like Melvin Ingram should get that done for us, and hopefully should be a lot cheaper than some of the other options out there at the edge position. Just because we have so much money, I actually have a second slide for free agency. We're going to target Brian Poole at cornerback. Again, 28-year-old that comes in. He's one of the best slot corners in football. We are going to try to kind of buff up the position in the draft as well when we talk about that, but we don't want our entire cornerback group to be as young as they are. We have guys like Rashad Melvin returning as well that should help bolster us. This is a position that, again, veterans are good to have, and then you want to bring in 1 or 2 young guys to kind of learn from those veterans. Brian Poole is one of the best out there when it comes to guarding the slot, which is becoming more and more important in today's NFL. We're going to bring him in on a 3-year, $18 million contract that's going to round out the rest of this defense and hopefully get us back in shape come 2021. Now, I don't expect the defense to go from 30th to first or 31st to first overnight, but I do expect them, if we can get back into that 15 range and we can upgrade the offense in the way that we've talked about already, that should help this team immensely when it comes to the win columns. So we got free agency out of the way. We have our high dollar signings coming in. We brought in a D tackle. We brought in an edge rusher. We brought in weapons as well to help them out. We still got to focus on our offensive line. We still need a safety to kind of round out the back half of our defense. We need a couple of positions here, but we're trying to avoid drafting for or need. We want to take the best positions we can find. We also need a tackle as well. The good thing is, a lot of these positions are going to most likely be where we're going to be picking. First off, we're going to get our quarterback first overall, Trevor Lawrence, coming in. It's the no-brainer pick. I know there'll be some people, especially when we get close to the draft, that say maybe they should take Zach Wilson, maybe they should take Justin Fields. Forget about it. We're taking Trevor Lawrence. He's the #1 prospect for a reason. We're going to bring him in. We just got lucky that we got the first pick in the year that he was available for us. No question, we're not overthinking it. Trevor Lawrence is going to be our first overall pick. After that, things get a little more interesting. We could go offensive tackle here down at pick 25. Again, we got this pick from the Rams, having traded Jalen Ramsey away. We have options. We could definitely go and move in another direction. We don't have to take a safety. But with the way that my mock draft kind of worked itself out and the way the teams kind of rushed edge rusher and some of the tackle positions, the value is really here at safety. We're going to get the best one off of the board, in my opinion, with Trayvon Moehrig, a guy who can kind of do it all. He almost reminds me of Jamal Adams, where he can hit, he can cover. He's not quite as dynamic of an athlete as someone like Adams is. He's not quite as fast, but he's a guy that can play pretty much any position at safety. He can play the free and play over top. He can guard some tight ends. He can guard receivers in the slot. He can also come up and play in the box when you need him to and tackle the running back. Perfect guy for our spot. We're going to take him at 25. Now, I did a 3-round mock draft. We're going to go through the rest of these picks that we have. We need to take an offensive tackle. So at 33, our first second-round pick, we're going to take Rashawn Slater at offensive tackle, a guy that some concerns are there. He's definitely a fantastic athlete. He definitely has the footwork you want to see. There is some concerns that his arms aren't quite long enough at under that 33-inch marker. I don't necessarily worry about that as much as other people do. I think as long as the guy has a proven track record of being a good blocker, it usually translates to the NFL. I think it'll translate as well. We have a very mobile tackle here. If it works out, fantastic. If not, we have 3 interior offensive linemen that are 29 years old. He's going to make a great guard slotting in for them if it doesn't quite work out for us. We're going to move him at left tackle, try him out for a year or two, and then if that doesn't work, we're going to shift him inside and try again to get our franchise left tackle as well. All I can say is when it comes to Cam Robinson, it's worth rolling the dice on bringing in Slater and seeing if he can be a top-end tackle that can stop some of these premier edge rushers from what would be the defensive right. After that, again, we talked about needing to upgrade running back. We're going to draft Travis Etienne. This is more of a luxury pick. This is more of a pick that if it falls into our lap and the guy is there for us, we're going to take him and we're going to buff up the position. Even if he's not the day one starter, even if he's not the guy that just comes in, he's the bell cow, having a rotation at running back in today's NFL is huge. Almost every team does it, except for the guys that have marquee running backs. Etienne has the chance to be a marquee running back. I see him as a little bit more of that next step down where he is a great player, but you don't want him necessarily to take every snap at running back. I think bringing him in to kind of supplement Robinson is what will be, again, it's all about weapons. When you have a young quarterback, you want to shore up the offensive line and you want to bring in weapons. Now, we are taking a little bit of a gamble in the offensive line in this kind of build, but bringing in weapons like Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry, bringing in guys like Chris Godwin or Allen Robinson again, bringing in Etienne to be that rotational kind of receiving back as well. We're going to have options. We're going to have weapons for our young quarterback to build and develop with in the positive way. There's 2 things that you always want to do to make sure you don't ruin a young quarterback. That is, you want to have strong offensive line play, and you want to make sure you have weapons for him to throw to and develop with. We've seen guys kind of struggle without that. That's what we're focusing mostly on building this year, and we're trying to focus on getting the defense back to a somewhat in the middle position. Our last pick is about doing just that. We're going to bring in, I'm going to slaughter this, Deo Odeyingbo from Vanderbilt. He's an edge rusher. Again, this is more of a value pick. When you get down into the 3rd round, there is a lot of what can we get that's the best player available, and that's going to be Deo here in this position. Melvin Ingram, we know, is a very short-term sort of rental, kind of Band-Aid over the position to help us out as well. We have Chaisson, but we don't want to just gamble on him being the future of this organization at our defensive end position. We know Josh Allen will be. We're kind of comfortable with that. We're going to bring in another guy just to roll the dice, to see who the best man is going to be and try to bring some competition into the position. I think bringing in an edge rusher this late is going to be the move when you're talking about what's left on the board. Now, for our late round picks, again, we want to go for value, but the positions we should be looking for are still cornerback because we could still stand to get better at that position. Tight end, just to bring in some youth at this position. You know, if we find a guy that we like at tight end here and we sign a big dollar tight end, we could let a guy like O'Shaughnessy or Tyler Eifert go before the season started. But for right now, we're going to keep our eyes out and see if we can find anybody for that. We're still looking for guard. We've got 3 guys that are on our interior line that are 29 years old. Eventually, they're going to come up, and we're going to see a decline in progress at all 3 of them. So we're going to keep an eye out for an interior guy and also wide receiver as well, because you can never have enough weapons in today's NFL. Those 4 positions should be what we're looking for to kind of round out this team. Whew, that was a lot. Thanks for sticking with me through the entire video. Let me know in the comments down below what you think the Jaguars should do. What parts did I get right? What parts did I get wrong? Make sure you let me know, because I love talking sports with you. I always try to respond to as many of the comments as I can. If you're new, consider subscribing, because we're going to be covering each and every one of these teams in the NFL, hopefully before free agency starts, as well as everything in the world of sports we like talking about. So if you like to join the party, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you've been around for a while, it's good to talk to you again. I know it's been a little while. I'm going to hopefully post a little bit more consistently here. So for Sports Around the Bar, I'm Jake. Hope to catch you guys in the next video. Thanks again so much for watching.